Welcome to A Dram of Outlander. This is Desiree, your podcaster and the writer for adramofoutlander.com. For all things Outlander, from the Diana Gabaldon book series to the Stars TV series and everything in between. This is episode 61, Voyager Read-Along, week 19, chapters 51 and 52. Well, hello there. It's another week. It's another podcast. We are getting deep into Voyager now. We still have a couple of months to go, but we're starting toward the downward trend. Things are getting very interesting. Before we get started, there is definitely something that I do want to read to you, at least in part, and give explanation. On December 8th, 2016, Diana Gabaldon posted an entire commentary on Geneva Dunsany. And this is in response to a blog that posted that Jamie's a rapist for one particular thing that happened during this encounter. And when we hit this portion of the read-along, I spent a lot of time on this because it's really important. And the other thing is that I say over and over that once this is out into public knowledge, once readers have it in their hands and in their minds, then there are different perceptions and different points of view that come across. And that's absolutely true. In some situations, it is very difficult to stray from the author's viewpoint. This is one of them, because this comes into play with looking at historical content, who these characters are, how they arrive where they are, who has the power. Like, we have to break it down in a way that gives the nuts and bolts, not just a perception, not simply a feeling. Like you prefer Claire over Jamie as a character, who you think the book's about. That is a little bit more of a global perspective. This is something that is detailed and needs to be looked at specifically. Now, I will say that I happen to absolutely agree with what Diane is saying, and you've heard me say it before. I have never heard her say this in this way publicly. Might she have? Sure. I don't follow every single thing that she says. But in this context, this is exactly how I see it. And if you go back to that podcast, it's going to echo what she's saying right now. I am not going to read this in whole. What I'm going to do is I'm going to put up as bonus content to the download an attachable PDF file that you can read for yourself. That way you don't have to go searching Facebook for the post itself. I want to put a warning out there that some of this language is pretty straightforward. And if you have been somebody who has been sexually assaulted or raped, it might be challenging to listen to parts of it. So she breaks it down into two parts. One is the reality, and one is about social ideology. So essentially in the first part, she goes over all the different things that set up this situation, and it equals 6 of them. And kind of in a nutshell, she's being married off unwillingly to a man old enough to be her grandfather. She's not going to give him her maidenhead, and that's the only power and control she has. Jamie's a prisoner. He's on parole. He's on her family estate. She blatantly flirts with him. She's obviously sexually attracted to him, but he ignores her and says no, blatantly tells her no. He turns her down. At this point, she gives the letter that she intercepted from Lallybroch. And now she can, if she wants, turn it into the authorities and have his entire family hanged for treason. This is pretty compelling for Jamie to deflower this girl as she wants. He is sick with terror and he's helpless. He can't do anything about it but do what she wants, and he does. So at this point, I'm going to read what Diana says. She says, okay, now personally, I have trouble seeing how anyone looks at the situation and emerges with the notion that it's Jamie who's committing rape. By the mores of the early 21st century, more about that in part 2, plainly Geneva is a sexual predator. And Jamie is the one who very clearly says no. No means no, right? Right? More about that in a moment. Geneva is blackmailing an innocent person and a man who is a captive, without power or resources, coercing him into committing a serious crime. Fornication with an unmarried young woman being technically a crime, even if consensual, as well as an immoral act. As well as something he patently, clearly, totally doesn't want to do, and has so stated in the baldest of terms. It's obvious that it's Geneva who's committing rape, not Jamie. QED. Now we move into the cultural ideology. Again, I'm not going to read it all. The notion that Jamie is raping Geneva rests on one brief moment during that fateful night. Diana Gabaldon lays out the detail. He goes to her room, how he feels about it, he can't murder her, and the bottom line is he's a gentleman. He's essentially a kind and decent man. He's twice her age, and he's very pragmatic by necessity and experience. So he treats her well in this situation, for many different reasons. He's as gentle as he can be with her. But given the fact that she is a virgin, she knows that it's going to hurt. And the unavoidable point that literally it's a push-come-to-shove situation, he's there to have her lose her virginity. He is the vehicle for that to happen. That's what she wants. And in the moment when she panics and feels that initial pain, she tells him to stop, it's too big, take it out. She also knows in her head that it's going to hurt. And she didn't mind. That's what she told him prior. And here's a sticking point. She didn't scream to bring household staff or anyone there. He knew if he stopped, she would mess with him until he actually did it. She's a very contrary young woman. He made a bargain and has to do it. And I will read number 9 verbatim. He doesn't stop. Here I will pause for the gasp of shock from whose innocence, cultural conditioning, see below, or lack of experience has led them to believe that this is rape. Are we momentarily recovered now? Good. Then let us go on. I know Diana's words sound really sharp, and yes, she can be brusque when she's speaking to readers, fans, etc. However, it is a very serious thing in her mind to be calling Jamie a rapist for something that is in one piece of this entire puzzle. I mean, if she would have cried out, Jamie probably would have died right there on the spot. And here's sort of the linchpin to all of this. Afterwards, she cuddles with him. She wants to call him by his name. He doesn't let her. She tries to say she loves him. He says this isn't love, and he says no, she can't do that. Then she wants him to have sex with her again. To somebody who's been traumatized by rape, and I'm sorry if this comes off as insensitive, I know many of my podcast listeners have been raped or sexually assaulted, and I hope this is not bringing up terrible things for you. I have also been assaulted, and I read this, and this does not read that way. It doesn't bring up those feelings to me that he hurt her or did something wrong. And everything boils down to, for people who think that Jamie is a rapist, that she said stop, and he didn't. If we go there, then we forget everything else that did and didn't happen. And I'm going to read again what she said specifically because it matters. Because she said stop and he didn't, forget everything else that did and didn't happen. Forget the personalities of the people involved. Forget the innate power imbalance of the situation. Forget the exploitation of an enslaved person. Forget everything. No means no, as long as it's a female who says it. Now from here I'm going to read what she says to a certain point. Those of you who are satisfied with the above analysis probably want to stop reading at this point, because if you held the opinion that Jamie committed rape, you're not going to like the following, and I warn you. This is analysis, not an invitation to engage me in ideological discussion. She says she won't answer any such attempts. In short, no means no. Is not, as some people seem to think, an immutable law of physics. True throughout all times and places, it's not even statutory law. It's a useful fiction developed in response to a very limited cultural context emerging over the last 50 years, in which promiscuous casual sex has been widely accepted as both normal and not immoral. Okay, this might be difficult to hear for some of you. I'm putting a little warning label on it. This context has, not surprisingly, made the question of consensual sex a thorny one for young men. And young men being what they are, sometimes they assume it's consensual, and the female party either doesn't, but got pretty far involved before saying so, or changes her mind. Sometimes she changes her mind after sex. Sometimes, yes, this is heresy. Make the most of it. She says no, but doesn't actually mean it. And then she puts in parentheses, circumstances aren't limited to the ones described. Sex is an intricate business and one with a vast array of possible emotions and meanings. Essentially, within the specific little ideological space, no is a safe word. It's meant to stop things getting out of hand, and if ideally employed, often it does. However, no safe word is effective unless both parties recognize the same rules of engagement. And finally, as noted, this cultural context developed since 1960 or thereabouts. I know I was there. It definitely wasn't in existence in 1757 in the Lake District of England. Ergo, to judge an encounter between people who were not operating by the conventions of your personal, limited ideological context by those conventions is somewhat unreasonable, not to say illogical. QED. That means quod erat demonstrandum. Thus it has been shown. It's what you put at the end of the proof of an algebraic theorem as an indication that you have proved it. And then she goes on to have a footnote. And you got the gist of what she said. And some of it is pretty blunt. Even if you take out some of the strength of words that she used, it comes down to the same thing. Jamie is not a rapist. He finished his job because he said he would. He committed to it and he did it. And if he would have stopped, what would she have done to him? That's a serious question. She's the predator. She's the one with the power. She's the one making threats. And he had said no before. I look forward to hearing your thoughts on this. And like I said, I will put it up as bonus content to be downloaded with the podcast. Another bit of news is that I started a private Facebook group for listeners of the podcast only. It's a Dram of Outlander under groups. You can search for it and then ask to be a part of it. Facebook.com/groups/A Dram of Outlander. There'll be discussions relating to the content, extra bonus podcast shorts for group members. There'll be giveaways at times and whatever else I can come up with for you because I value you as a listener. And now we can take a little deep breath and get resettled. And thank you for joining me at my dining room table for conversation and a dram of Outlander. Chapter 51, in which Jamie smells a rat. So at the end of chapter 50, Claire was asking Fergus, where is Jamie? And of course, we didn't know where Jamie was. He couldn't tell her. And now we know where Jamie is. He's on the Porpoise, of all places. He's battered and bruised, with a large splinter in his hand, but he made it on to the ship. That is some serious determination. He wants, in all caps, his Claire. 2 of the men on the Artemis had been on a man-of-war prior, so they were able to describe to Jamie the layout over and over until he memorized it. But it's much different hearing about it and navigating it for himself. And he found himself slightly nauseated, but nothing like the smaller boat. He was able to get the splinter free, and he was thinking of where Claire might be. With the sick men, of course. That's the logical thing to do. How did Jamie get to the ship? He was rowed out after dark by Robbie McCrae, and he was told he had about 2 hours while the Porpoise was anchored to find Claire and get off the ship and meet the Artemis again. And while he was thinking, he inhaled the stench of illness, knowing that Claire would be where the intense reek was strongest. Oh yes, where it was the most foul, Dr. Claire would be. 4 hours goes by and he still hadn't found her. He went around the ship 3 times and no Claire. He's frustrated and he's getting angry. "Bloody woman, where have you gone, you fascist wee Heidi?" Or rather, "Bloody woman, where have you gone, you troublesome little ... ? I can't find the definition of Heidi, so thinking it's someone who's staying hidden. And then he begins to have his mind wander, and he wonders if she had died of the illness after all. He sees germs as small blind sharks, and he can see them fastening to her and killing her. This idea in his head is why he pursued the Porpoise, and he was in a murderous rage toward the captain, who took her with a vague promise to return her after they were done with her skills and services. And he thinks, leave her to the Sassenachs unprotected? Like, no way was he doing that. And since he'd been around most of the boat 3 times, he found his way down into the goat pen. Well, Annekje is in the goat pen, right? And she knows where Claire is. And he heard what he thought was a woman's voice. He also heard footsteps above and worried he may have been seen. And at this point, they were a long way from the Artemis, as the rendezvous had been missed. And his boldness increased. At this point, he didn't really care. He just wanted to find out what happened to her. It was a woman, but it wasn't Claire. But of course, he doesn't know Annekje Johansson. And there was a man with her. It's Tompkins, the one-eyed sailor. And he recognized Jamie right away. Jamie doesn't know his name, and Tompkins won't tell him. Jamie grabs him and asks where Mrs. Malcolm is. He doesn't know. Jamie threatens him. He tries to save his skin, but Jamie chokes him. And Jamie lets him go before he passes out, or he dies. Tompkins, ever the squealer, says he'll tell him. Jamie grabs him hard again, harder than he meant to, and Tompkins makes a noise. He says she's gone overboard, lost. Jamie tries to get more information, but Tompkins is backing away and says Jamie will be with her soon, meaning hanged. And then there were sounds of footsteps as he was clubbed hard on the head. And of course, Tompkins had to kind of get his digs in because he's that kind of guy. When he knows he's in danger, he'll give everything up. When he thinks he's safe, he'll razz you to death. When he woke, he knew the blow had been a tremendously hard one. He'd felt it before and was ginger to move. His head cleared slowly. He was on a ship, but it smelled wrong. Then he remembered, and he sat painfully, bolt upright. Claire, lost, drowned, dead. And at this movement, and at his grief, he threw up. The door opens, and Captain Leonard comes in. He's carrying a lantern. He apologizes to Jamie, and Jamie describes his face as looking regretful for killing her. Oh. Jamie raged, and he knocked Leonard out. And then there were lanterns and shouting everywhere. I wouldn't want to be on the receiving end of Jamie's mortally angry fist. He was overcome and knocked out in return. He thought they would kill him now, and that's okay, because Claire was gone. Oh, poor Jamie. The next thing he knows, the light touch of fingers are on his face, and it awakens him. He reaches sleepily, and it was a giant spider crawling on him. And immediately, with an internal reaction, he was on his feet. The spider ran off, nearly as frightened as Jamie was. Okay, the spider theme in these chapters is out of control. Thank you, Lawrence Stern. And tropical spiders can be gigante. Grande. And he hears an outburst of giggles, looks around, and there are 6 children roosting in a large tree. He bows to them dizzily with rubbery legs. Mesdames, messieurs. He thinks, why did I speak to them in French? Vous êtes matelot? Are you a sailor? One of the children asks. No, je suis guerrier. I'm a soldier. The children begin to bicker, and they call each other things like shitface and cockabrains and frog guts. Sweet children. There's sometimes an updated version of that going on amongst my own 4. And he asks one of the older girls where they are. Cap Haitian, Hispaniola. Jamie was thirsty and asked for water. His mind is beginning to work again. He remembers swimming for his life in heaving waves and heavy rain. See, he got knocked on the head hard twice. He probably had a concussion. And then he remembers swimming in heaving seas. It's going to take a bit for him to remember everything. The children were hurling questions at him. Is he a deserter? Yes, he says mindlessly. But he was thinking about the Porpoise. Being in the small room, so grief-stricken, he hadn't noticed the excess rolling of the ship. Finally, he did notice. There was a growing storm outside, a giant storm. In the room, there was nothing but him, and he bounced all around it with each large movement of the ship. When he was nearly unconscious, he was brought to alertness with a strong smell of goat in his nose. He had no idea how, but the woman from the goat pen had gotten him up the ladder to the afterdeck, and she was speaking to him all along in broken English. He had no idea how or why she was helping him. But he did remember the very last thing that she said. "She is not dead. She go there," pointing to the sea. "You go too. Find her." And then she proceeds to pick him up by putting her hand in his crotch and a shoulder under his bum, and she cleanly throws him overboard into the stormy sea. I can so see Annekje Johansson doing this. "You go too. Find her." She's a good woman. I can see this so much in action. And Annekje herself must be one strong and determined woman. And then a boy says to Jamie, "You're not an Englishman, but the ship is." And he's pointing to the Porpoise anchored out at sea. And then this boy happily one-ups one of the others by properly guessing the country of origin. Then the other says, 3, I get Spanish and Portuguese. The Bruja was Portuguese." The Bruja, it seems, was in port the prior week. Zoutalor! That is the ship young Ian was taken away on. So the points are coming back. We found Lord John Grey again. We got to meet Stern in person. And now we know where the Bruja is. Check, check, check. And we have a priest. So all the boxes are getting checked. We know where Claire is, and now we know where Jamie is, and he's on the same island. So they're slowly getting closer to each other. One of the little girls said the sailors were in her mama's tavern. Jamie wants to speak to her mama. The Bruja was going to Bridgetown. The barracks are next to her mama's tavern. The ship's captains all go there, and the sailors get drunk in the tavern. She wants to take him immediately to see Mama, but he is worried by his dirty clothing, bruised face, and bloodshot eyes. "Mama has seen much worse than you. Come on." He followed the little girl, still unsteady, and found it a comfort that though he looked terrible, the children weren't afraid of him. I find that of interest, and I haven't quite slotted what that means. Why does that comfort him? They just accept him for what he is and move on. He wonders if the goat woman meant Claire swam ashore to this island. He felt hopeful. He knew of Claire's character, stubborn, reckless, and more courage than she ought to have. And she would never fall off a man-of-war by accident. And the Bruja was near. This is all good news. He didn't care that he was a penniless, shoeless outlaw from the Royal Navy. He had his wits and his hands, and with the land beneath his feet, all seemed possible. This is the mirror image of what Claire did when she got to land. His was more expedient than hers. We couldn't spend another half day of him fighting through mangroves. But Lawrence Stern found her and helped her, along with the priest and a malevolent mamacita. And these 6 children found Jamie, and Annekje helped both of them. They're both experiencing the same emotions. And I would like to say I think Annekje is a really great wing woman. And Jamie can't live without Claire. He risked getting ill himself to go and take her back. He cannot and will not live without her under any circumstances that he can help or influence. And I was thinking about Captain Leonard. He's probably sporting a very bad headache. What about Tompkins? That mercenary-minded yahoo. They're all still in play, along with Lord John Grey. But Jamie doesn't know about Lord John Grey. only Claire does. And she doesn't know Jamie knows him. Oh, spider reference. What a tangled web we weave. Jamie and Claire end up on the same island after that horrible storm. Jamie certainly is creative, and he will know how to find out if the Artemis is there. Since Claire has already found the Artemis and remaining crew, Jamie no doubt will be back with her soon. Chapter 52. A wedding takes place. Claire is a worried mess. The Artemis is getting repaired, and she has a belly of icy concern. Jamie got worried and got ragey and got mad and went after her. She has no idea where Jamie is or how she could find him. Did the men not tell her he took a boat out to the Porpoise? But like she's going to go show up at the Porpoise. But if they told her, she could find out maybe where the Porpoise is. So perhaps it hadn't crossed her mind, or nobody told her. And during the Artemis getting repaired, she takes Marcelie to the house on the hill as a distraction. And Marcelie, of course, charms Father Fogden because she made him a sheep dip recipe to kill ticks. Stern was helping in the repair of the ship. And while he was doing that, Claire was to guard his specimen bag and to go searching for spiders, arachnida, in the nearby jungle as she looked for her own medicinal plants. Nope, no, nine, niet. I'm not looking for any of them giant spiders for you, Stern boy. But Claire, more gracious than I am, agrees to do it for him. And after her short expeditions, on the third day, along with her lily roots, orange shell fungus, special moss, she brings him a big, live tarantula. It was large enough to send Lawrence into paroxysms of delight. I can get pretty excited about something like a beautiful placenta. Truth be told, placentas aren't going to leap on me, bite me, hurt me. I'll stick with placentas. I don't want to deal with the arachnida. Thank you very much. And she could see that much progress had been made in repairing the Artemis. It's no longer on its side, and it was nearly upright, assisted by ropes, wedges, and much shouting. As she and Fergus were discussing the final details of the repair, soldiers approached. And at Fergus's insistence, Marcelie and Claire went into the nearby woods. Marcelie tries to ask Claire several questions, but Claire doesn't know anything either. French soldiers were coming, and the Artemis has French papers, so it might be okay. But the soldiers could also confiscate the beached ship and make a tidy profit. I like how Claire is always looking at the differing angles in a situation and what it could take. This is part of that clinical viewpoint that she tends to take, that left-brained analysis of what is going on, what are all the options, how do we stay safe, where do we go from here. She's always calculating that in her head, whether or not we see her doing it, she's doing it. And she thinks the seamen have some weapons and would fight if they had to, and it would be a bloody fight indeed. Fergus stands tall and strong, waiting to engage the soldiers. 10 feet away from the crew, the soldiers stop. The big soldier halted them by putting up his hand and gets off his horse. Claire was watching Fergus and not the soldiers. She was looking for his reaction, and it intrigued her. His face changed, it froze, and it went white under his tanned skin. Claire looked at the approaching soldier, and her blood froze too. Silence, mes amis. Silence. Et restez, s'il vous plaît. Silence, my friends. Silence and do not move, if you please. Claire says she would have fallen if she wasn't already on her knees, and she gives up a silent prayer of thanksgiving. Marcelie gasps, and Claire puts a hand over her mouth. The commander took off his hat, revealing auburn hair, and he grinned at Fergus, toothy and showing a red, curly beard. He took Fergus aside as the leader of the crew, telling the others to stay where they were. Marcelie shook Claire's tight grip off of her. Claire accidentally hurt her. And she starts asking questions again. I don't know. Be quiet, for God's sake, Claire says. The Artemis crew played along, but made small knowing expressions at each other. After Jamie and Fergus finished conferring, Fergus explained that the soldiers were from the nearby garrison and they would help relaunch the Artemis under the guidance of wink wink Captain Alessandro. Alessandro means Alexander. Snort. Jamie likes to use the same names. He just converts them into other languages. The men were a mix of happy and bewildered. One almost blew the cover, and Fergus pulled him away. An unfortunate accident, Fergus explains. They were seen beached and reported to the garrison. Fergus calls them all to work, and he has one of the crew even sing for them. He's putting on a good face in this charade. Jamie, at the same time, was giving directions to the soldiers. Claire thinks they had faces of concealed greed, so her hunch that they might try and steal the ship could be right. Claire and Marcelie stay hidden because there was something else going on, and she knew they should stay and wait. The work on the ship continued furiously. After a long day, Fergus's voice was hoarse from yelling orders, and his sweat-dampened shirt clung to his body. He was working hard. Captain Alessandro, on the other hand, waited in the shade near a palmetto. And quite a long time passed. Then Jamie nodded toward one of the guards. Claire motioned to Marcelie to stay, and she went to look where Jamie had gone. She found him, and she popped up out of a bush as he was doing up his laces, and he shrieked. She popped back into hiding. Well, the other soldiers thought something happened, and Jamie assured them it was fine, that he had seen a snake. C'est bien. Ce n'est qu'un serpent. It's good, it's nothing but a snake. Jamie assured them the snake was harmless. No, c'est innocent. Jamie then plunged into the bush, crushed Claire tightly to his chest, then shook her hard. Like her teeth rattled, and she bit her lip. Damn you, I thought you were dead for sure. How dare you do something so harebrained like jump off a ship in the middle of the night? Have you no sense at all? Let go. What do you mean, how dare I do something harebrained? You idiot, what possessed you to follow me? He yells back at her and explains that she's his wife for Lord's sake. Of course he would follow. And why had she not waited, etc. And then he realized that time was short and refrained from saying anything further. And she held back things she wanted to say too. Jamie and Claire get heated with each other when worried, when fear of the loss of the other comes up. They escalate. That's how they show how much they care. They panic, and they get angry at each other, and they lash out. They don't know what to do with those strong emotions of grief and possible loss. She asks what he is doing there. Precisely, she says, what in bloody hell? I'm the captain. Did you not notice? He gave her a final shake and glared at her, Marcelie, both. Stay here, the both of you, and dinna stir a foot, or I swear I'll beat you senseless. He headed out toward the beach. She and Marcelie just stared at each other. But then Jamie crashed back through the bushes. He grabbed Claire and kissed her well. I forgot. I love you, and I'm glad you're not dead. Dinna do that again. After shaking her a little more, he disappeared back toward the beach. Marcelie had very wide open eyes at all of this. Claire has no idea what Jamie is going to do. She feels flushed and tingling where his unfamiliar beard rasped her a little. The wait was so long, Claire dozed by the tree. Marcelie shook her awake and told her the ship was launching. The remaining soldiers and the crew, even Innes, Fergus, and Murphy, partially limbed, were helping. Claire describes the scene. It was sunset, with the sea gone, the color purple of the whelks, another reference to these sea creatures. The men are dark outlines, and she says they look like slaves in an Egyptian painting, tethered to the rope of their massive burden. She sees Jamie swing onto the boat, and the other men rowed out on the jolly boat and climbed the ladder, as did the French soldiers. Claire and Marcelie watched. All of a sudden, a shout from the Artemis, and the men in the boats jerked up, but no other signal came. The Artemis simply floated on the rising waters of the inlet like a painting. At this, Claire is done waiting, and Marcelie follows her out onto the beach. Fergus runs toward them. He grabs Marcelie and swings her around. Mon cria, chérie, a mix of Gaelic and French. Done without a shot fired, he says. Milady, the captain of the Artemis, desires you will honor him with your company over supper. I love how formal Fergus always is. Claire gets to the cabin, and Jamie is standing in the middle of it, eyes closed and naked, scratching his testicles. She interrupts his pleasantry with an He lights and embraces her. They said nothing for quite a while, and she listens to the noise of the ship coming back to life around them. She was warm and tingly where his beard had rasped her face. It felt strange, and she, becoming a bit shy, as he was naked, and herself as bare under Father Fogden's tattered robe. She was barely back, and now she's been gone for weeks, and they were sleeping separately on the Artemis before she was taken by Captain Leonard. So to have him physically in front of her and them touching each other can feel odd and awkward. And she thinks Jamie was the same from the neck down, yet had a stranger's face. He smelled odd too and looked like a Viking marauder. She said he smelled like a brothel. And she says, it sounds like she doesn't like the view, basically, but should he dress? And she stammers that she might like the beard, maybe. He hates the beard. Lice, you know. And then Claire nervously thinks of little legs walking through her curls. Ugh. Do not fast yourself, Sassenach. I've already sent for a razor and hot water. She says his beard is multicolored and pretty. She touches it. Copper, gold, amber, cinnamon, roan, with a thick silver streak down the center. Yet he has no silver in his hair, she says. He had no idea, having not seen himself in a long time. He's surprised he hasn't gone white altogether given the last month. And she says, speaking of that, and Jamie told her that he told the soldiers once they launched the Artemis, they were to push all the crew into the hold and take the ship. But he also told Fergus that. So Fergus told the crew to do it instead. Aha. Claire wants to know how he got there, but a knock at the door stalled the conversation. It's hot water from Murphy, as Jamie had requested. And then Jamie is talking to the crewman who came into the room, and he realizes he can say when the ship goes or stops. He orders extra grog to be given to the men, and they should stay until after supper, or after Jamie has his supper. He asks it in the context of how much drink can the crew handle and still sail. He knows the crew at this point very well. And then the other crewman asks when Willoughby should come see Jamie. And as he leaves, Claire asks for a bottle of the strongest vinegar for Murphy and her medicines that the men can find. Jamie is curious about the vinegar, and she says it's to kill the lice so she doesn't have to sleep with the vermin. Oh, you mean to sleep with me, do you? He says, looking at the wall berth. Yes, but she's not sure where, and she wishes he wouldn't shave the beard quite yet. He wants to know why. She says it feels different on her skin. He reaches out to touch her fine skin, from her face down her collarbone to her breasts, gently tracing. You have a lot of very fine skin, Sassenach. Is that what you were thinking? More or less, yes. This is some foreplay going on. It's getting warm in here. Instead of sending the hot water back to Murphy, she has him wash himself with it. She says he smells like a brothel, and he explains why. He obviously has very nice manners to allow the whores to sit on his lap. And then he decides they're going to anchor there all night, so he and Claire can stay ashore where there's room. Room for what? She wants to know. He has it all planned out. He's been thinking of it for months. He's wanted to have her naked and willing, without anyone in hearing distance, and room enough to serve her properly. It's definitely getting hot in here, this lusty duo. He lathered the soap and applies it to his face. She says she's willing enough, and there's room. As for naked... And now I'm going to read what Jamie says to her, because I couldn't do it justice otherwise. I'll see to that. That's part of the plan, I shall take you to a private spot, spread out a quilt to lie on, and commence by sitting down beside you. Well, that's a start, all right. What then? As for what next, then I shall take you on my knee and kiss you. He paused to illustrate, holding my arms so I couldn't move. He let go a minute later, leaving my lips slightly swollen, tasting of ale, soap, and Jamie. So much for step 1, I said. What then? Then I shall lie you down upon the quilt, twist your hair up in my hand, and taste your face and throat and ears and bosom with my lips. I thought I would do that until you start to make squeaking noises. I don't make squeaking noises. Aye, you do. Here, hand me the towel, Then I thought I would begin at the other end. I shall lift up your skirt and what? And kiss the inside of your thighs, where the skin's so soft, the beard might help there, It might. What am I supposed to be doing while you do this? Well, you might moan a bit, if you like, to encourage me, but otherwise, you just lie still. My beloved's arm is under me, and his hand behind my head. Comfort me with apples, and stay me with flagons, for I am sick of love. More like grapefruit, or possibly gourds. Grapefruit are too small. Gourds? Well, wild gourds get that big sometimes. But that's next. I lie upon my back, and have you stretched at the length upon me, so that I can get a hold of your buttocks and fondle them properly. He stopped washing to give me a quick example of what he thought proper, and I let out an involuntary gasp. Now, should you wish to kick your legs a bit, or make lewd motions with your hips and pant in my ear at that point in the proceedings, I should have no great objection. I do not pant. Aye, you do. Now about your breasts. Oh, I thought you'd forgotten about those. Never in life. No, that's when I take off your gown, leaving you in naught but your shift. I am not wearing a shift. Oh well, no matter. I meant to suckle you through the thin cotton till your nipples stood up hard in my mouth, and then take it off, but it's no great concern. I'll manage without. So allowing for the absence of your shift, I shall attend to your breasts until you make that wee bleeding noise. I don't. And then, since you will, according to the plan, be naked, and provided I've done it right so far, possibly willing as well, oh, just possibly, then I shall spread open your thighs, take down my breeks, and we'll see what sort of noise it is you don't make then, Sassenach. Then there was a slight cough in the doorway behind him. How was that for foreplay? After not seeing each other for a very long time. That is some lovely talk. This is sexy without being graphic. It oozes sexy. This scene is writing sex scenes at its finest. Mind you, Jamie is naked this whole time. And now they're on visitor number 2. He wasn't expecting Willoughby quite so soon, so he tells him to go have supper and hands him the old clothes to be burned in the galley fire. Now, what's next is a bit weird. At least to me it is. They discuss Lawrence Sterne, and Claire remarks, "Oh, he is the Jewish natural philosopher you told me about." Why did she ask this? She and Lawrence had an extensive conversation. He had already told her about the meeting, the whys and the hows. Perhaps it was her way to ferret out Jamie's own version of events to see if they matched. What do you think? Suspicious Claire. It simply states to me that they have not been around each other long enough for her to be totally comfortable. She wants to be, but there's a lot of situations under the bridge since she's returned, and she wants to make sure she knows everything. And she tells Jamie how she met Sterne in the mangroves and the fish and such. And then she suddenly remembers he owes Father Fogden 2 shillings for Arabella. Arabella? And she thinks it would be better if Sterne was the go-between, and as the priest really likes him. And then there's another knock on the door, and Jamie is frustrated he just can't get dressed in peace. And Claire can't even tell him that Arabella is a goat. And this time it's Marcelly. And yes, Jamie is still stark naked. He covers his front quickly. Now, this is twice she's seen Jamie naked. I don't know what happened when he was married to Larry, but geez, she's gotten some eyefuls of this man. He asks what she needs, and she comes in the room. She has a determined look upon her face. And through some ins and outs and ups and downs, she deftly negotiates for a marriage ceremony by Father Fogden. She knows he'll do it because he likes her. And what seals the deal is her response when Jamie asks her if she's sure. I am, Da. I truly am. I want Fergus. I love him. And it was done. Jamie sent for Stern because he's going to help make the arrangements. And Marcelly pauses and asks Claire if she could give her some of her good soap. And poor Marcelly is a mess. Her hair is matted, her clothes are dirty, her feet are dirty. And Claire says sure. And then Claire decides that Marcelly certainly needs a dress, and Jamie's about to protest, and she says she knows where she can find one to borrow at the priest's house. Ermenahilda? Arabella? Gowns? What sort of priest is this, Sassenach? Right? Truly, what sort of priest is this? Claire basically says he drinks a little bit, is fond of sheep, and might remember the words to the wedding ceremony. Marcelly is one tough cookie, and Jamie's not going to go back on his word, and she was not going to let him. The wedding ceremony is a unique one, to be sure. And Jamie says they're not leaving until the next day so the newlyweds can have privacy ashore on their wedding night. Yes, and so he and Claire also can. 2 birds, 1 stone. He says he can't imagine losing your maidenhead in one of these berths or in a hammock. And they would get so put together they would not be able to pry them apart if they did. Ugh, imagery. And Claire is remembering, as she looks at Jamie standing on the beach, that while they talked, she cleaned his head and his beard with vinegar. And in front of her, standing on the beach, smelling of said vinegar, wearing his blue coat and gray breeks, stockings, and his hair is clubbed and ribboned. His beard is still a bit incongruous, but it's been trimmed and finely combed to get rid of the lice. He is a fine picture of the father of the bride. Murphy and Maitland are the chief witnesses. Marcelly really wanted Claire, but even though her credentials as a Catholic are sound, she didn't think Leary would like it very much. And Fergus really wanted Stern, but since he's not a Christian and he's Jewish, that wasn't going to work. So Murphy and Maitland it was. And Jamie says to Claire he told Marcelly to write her mother straight away about her marriage, but maybe not to mention anything else. And this gets Claire's mind going. Certainly Leary would likely be displeased her daughter is marrying a one-handed ex-pickpocket twice her age. The fact that the wedding was held on a West Indian beach by a disgraced, if not defrocked priest, and it's witnessed by 25 seamen, 10 French horses, a small flock of sheep that have been beribboned for the occasion, and a King Charles spaniel who's humping Murphy's wooden leg at any chance he gets, is terrible enough. But for Claire to actually participate in the proceedings would likely be unbearable for Leary to handle. I wanted to sing to the tune of the 12 Days of Christmas, going through that laundry list of wedding participants. Claire notes that it is a beautiful, warm Caribbean night, and the stars are shining down upon them, and poor Father Fogden looks frail and weak, and she cannot imagine how Stern convinced him to do this. But ultimately, Father Fogden does the job. It takes some prompting and prodding, and he's quite alarmed that Fergus has only one hand, and tells them he has to have a cock or he cannot marry them. Once a priest, always a priest. Jamie had to step in at one point, asking the father to marry them now. And then he says, "Name, I have to have a name. Can't get married without a name, just like a cock. Can't get married without a name, can't get married without a..." Marcelly says her full name to drown him out. He gets on with it. And she says an emphatic, "I do." And Fergus is up next. "You have a name and a cock?" "Yes." Fergus is his name. It's the only name he's had since Jamie gave it to him, outside of his given first name, Claudel. And the priest doesn't know what to do with this. It's bad enough he's one-handed. But what name is he giving Marcelly? And at this, Jamie pipes up and says, "Fraser. Fergus Claudel Fraser." And Fergus glows at this. He has a last name now, and he repeats his newly given name, Fergus Claudel Fraser. And the ceremony continues. Fergus places a ring on Marcelly's finger, and Claire thinks he must have been carrying it since Scotland. And she had done it, a 15-year-old girl with nothing but stubbornness. I want him, she kept saying, through all of it. Everything on this journey. Fergus and Marcelly beamed at each other as they gazed into each other's eyes. And Claire thinks she didn't say that to Jamie on their wedding day, I want him. But she did 3 times since, at important times. And Jamie asks what she's thinking. He says, Mokia. And she smiles. What I tell you 3 times is true. And on tiptoe she kisses him as the sailors' cheer went up for Fergus and Marcelly. Ooh, the power of 3. Fergus and Marcelly are married, not just legally, now they're recognized by the church. Jamie and Claire are reunited, and he's hopefully lice-free, and he's still bearded. The Artemis is back in their control and seaworthy, with Jamie as the absolute unlikely captain. The Bruja is near, hopefully with young Ian on it, alive and well. Stern has given Claire valuable information about the caves. And what about the Porpoise, the new governor of Jamaica? Lord John Grey. What about Jamie being a wanted man by the Royal Navy? There are so many questions. And why did Jamie want to talk to Mr. Willoughby? What was that about? So next week we have chapters 53 to 55. Also be on the lookout for the Outlander Science Club recording. And you may wonder, how can you support the podcast? You can support it by sharing the links for listening, by telling others about it, by sending me your feedback by email to adramaofoutlander@gmail.com, leaving me comments or questions and thoughts on the voicemail number, 719-425-9444, by joining in the Wednesday night chat on Twitter using hashtag ADOO. It's at 6 p.m. Pacific Time, 9 p.m. Eastern Time, and usually runs about 2 hours, and we cover the previous Saturday's chapters. You can also like A Dram of Outlander on Instagram, on Twitter, come to the Facebook page. And if you create an Outlander-inspired product, I would be happy to discuss a giveaway through the podcast. And if you feel so led, you can make a one-time financial contribution or a monthly contribution through patreon.com/adramaofoutlander. And remember, as a listener, you can join the new private Facebook group, facebook.com/groups/adramaofoutlander. You are important to me. You are why I do this and why I strive to improve week after week. And on one final thought, I put up the poll about who the Outlander book series ultimately orbits around. And I will discuss the findings after the poll closes and what my final thoughts are on it. It's been an interesting journey. And as always, I thank you so much for listening. And until next time, Slán je va.